Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, and welcome to Dibble's 87th webinar. We're thrilled to be here today. This is Kay Reed, I'm the Executive Director, and with me I have Kathy Guidry, who's doing our engineering. Hi, Kathy.
Hi, it's good to be here this afternoon.
And we'll introduce you to Melissa, Crystal, and Torri in just a little bit. But first, some housekeeping on this webinar. Note this phone number, and you also have it in your confirmation email. If something happens to your computer audio, you can always come in through the phone door if that's needed. We do want you to participate. We're going to have some polls. And in this particular webinar, we're going to have you raise your hands, and we're going to do that super fast. This is a great presentation, and we're going to do some voting on some photos. And so just be prepared, know where your hand is, and be ready to raise it. And then, of course, we'll archive this so you can share it with others in a couple of days. So a little bit about Dibble. These are our founders, Charlie and Helen Dibble, and you can read more about them on our website and how Charlie's vision for helping young people using research to help them navigate their love lives is really our core and our foundation, and we're so very grateful for his vision, 25 years ago. And today, Kathy, the next slide, the Dibble Institute is now reaching, last year we reached 76,000 youth, conservatively calculated, and when we say reach, Dibble doesn't do direct services. We depend on people like the presenters in our webinar today, as well as those of you who are listening in to do the good work of reaching the young people that are in your communities, in your programs with this important work. And we have some core values. We believe in research, and we follow the research where it goes. When research changes or understanding it gets clarified, we change our programs to fit that. So that's our basis of what we follow. We also believe in strong and healthy and stable and safe families. There's lots of ways to create safe, stable, and healthy families, and we try to help people do that, whether they may be raising a child singly or as a couple. We want a safe place for children to be raised, for sure. And lastly, we believe all people should be treated with respect, and all relationships can get better with relationship skills. So we write our materials in a way that is inclusive of all kinds of relationships. So to our presenters today, but first, let's do a quick poll. You may have answered this when you registered, but for those of you who are on the call today, and Kathy, if you could launch that, can you tell us in which setting you work, urban, rural, or both? We'd like to see who's in the audience today. Okay, so it looks like, you know, everybody we all work in many of these settings, both urban and rural. It looks pretty evenly divided there. So interesting. It's good to have everyone's perspective here. There are lots of times we think about urban young people one way and rural young people might be a different way, and it's good to have these experts with us to talk about that. Crystal Agnew is down in Miami. She's been in the relationship skills world for many years and has lots of experience working with young people in many different settings within the Miami community. Torri comes to us from Angela Turner Associates, and she's a consultant with them and knows and administers a lot of these grants that focus on relationship skills. And Melissa is from rural West Virginia. She and Crystal often team up on these presentations, and she has perspective of working there in Appalachia with those young people. So just to be sure people understand what we're doing here, we're going to talk about urban and rural youth within the context of sexual risk avoidance education. Both Melissa and Crystal are grantees, and they both use a Dibble curricula. So they are going to be talking about their experience working with urban and rural youth in that setting, or using that grant funding, using a Dibble program. So that's kind of the overview of today's show, as it were. So, Crystal, you're up first.
Thank you very much, Kay, and good afternoon, everybody. Hope you're doing well. We're glad you're with us today. So today, some of the things that we're going to talk about, some of your learning objectives, are identifying elements of an effective risk avoidance curriculum, talking about why need risk avoidance education, and different aspects of healthy and unhealthy relationships through some of our hands-on activities that we do through the Love Notes program. So the Sexual Risk Avoidance Education Program is implementing education that teaches participants how to voluntarily refrain from non-marital sexual activity and the prevention of other youth risk behaviors. SRAE programs are to provide services to youth at risk for poverty, unhealthy relationships, sexual coercion, dating violence, underage drinking, substance abuse, and other adolescent risk behaviors. So our program provides education on refraining from non-marital sexual activity. We talk about self-regulation. We do a lot of work on goal setting, decision-making skills, and we talk to them about the success sequence. So we're going to talk a little bit about rural versus urban, and Trinity primarily serves in urban locations. We serve in New York City and in Miami, Florida. And then Melissa's going to talk to you some about the serving rural youth in West Virginia, and we're going to talk about how our programs service these different areas and how this program curriculum Love Notes that we've utilized through SRAE has had good impact in both of our communities. So the problem. Do we have a bigger problem in our urban areas or our rural areas? And so what we have are some of our teen birth rate and STD rates from New York and from West Virginia. And I'll tell you, Miami, our numbers run parallel with both of these locations. And as you can see, they line up pretty similarly whether we're in a rural or urban area. So what we know is that irregardless of where we live, our young people are having high teen birth rates, high STD rates that we're working to address. So in Harlem, and I'll talk a little bit about Miami too, because now we're implementing the sexual risk avoidance in Miami as well. You can do the next slide, Kathy. So a little bit about who we are. We're a church that has multiple locations, but two of our locations are Miami and New York. We've been operating through our Peacemakers Family Center, which is our social service department, since 2000. And we focus on programs that strengthen families, and we work to assist them from a place of crisis to self-sufficiency. We have been successfully implementing programs in the area of adolescent pregnancy prevention, positive youth development, healthy relationship and marriage education, and children's programming and overall family strengthening since we started in 2000. Our program, you see the Plan B branding on there. That is the overall brand of who our youth programs are. And the Plan B program is about helping youth know who they plan to be so they don't have to have a Plan B. So we've been providing evidence-informed and evidence-based APP programming for 15 years. And we're actually just over $20 million now from 9 different federal grant awards, serving more than 51,000 youth through 44 public, charter, and alternative schools and 13 community-based organizations in New York City and in Miami. Our Plan B sexual risk avoidance program includes education on healthy relationships, adolescent pregnancy prevention, marriage education, family financial literacy and overall family strengthening. We talk about social media, which you'll see as we're getting into the curriculum lesson, but we focus on social media as well, breaking up dating violence. So all of that is a part of what we provide through the program. We serve culturally underrepresented high school and middle school youth, and we serve youth who are plagued with many socioeconomic disparities, high poverty, high unemployment rates, low levels of education, and we have really stubborn pockets of high, not just teen birth rates, but teen pregnancy rates. And one unique thing about New York City is that their teen pregnancy rate to their teen birth rate is really large, because they have a lot of a high abortion rate between 15 and 19-year-olds in New York City. So it sometimes makes teen birth rates look really low in some of those areas. And in reality, the reason why is because of abortion rates. So they're still having really high pregnancy rates. And then our whole motto, I guess you could say, is we're future ready. And so we hand out incentive items that revolve around this last quote that you're going to see. My choices today affect my tomorrow. I am the only one that can fill my destiny. I vow to make choices that protect my future. So here's just some demographic information about our programs. And as you can see, we're really about half and half for males and females in our programs. We've served a lot more middle than high school in New York. In Miami, it's the opposite. We get a lot more high school than middle school, just because of testing issues in middle school. And so really location matters, knowing your community. That will all impact the demographics that you're serving. You can see our race ethnicity breakdown. In New York, we serve the largest population would be Hispanic, and then our Black population, and then Asian in New York City. In Miami, you would see that flipped, where our highest population would be Black, African American, Caribbean island youth. It would be our highest population we serve. So for our 2016-2017 enrollment, so we serve 600 youth annually in New York City. So we use Relationship Smarts Plus, which is the middle school curriculum of Love Notes. So we do both middle and high, and we use the Dibble programs for each. So as you can see, we completed 616 with the Relationship Smarts Plus, and 114 with the Love Notes curriculum. As a part of our project, because we serve in such high need, high risk areas, we also provide youth with a comprehensive needs assessment that they self-fill out, a trauma screener, and then based on what they self-report and the trauma score, we put them into tiers, and then they get case management based on their tiers. And the referrals would go along with that too. So if you have food insecurity or homelessness, they would go in tier 3, which is immediate needs. If they need like tutoring or they're bored after school, they would go in a lower. So then a lower level tier. So we assess them based on needs. We deal with immediate, more pressing needs first, and then we work our way down to work with youth to find them employment if they need employment, or an after school activity or tutoring. And now Melissa is going to share with you some about mission.
Okay, hey, I'm Melissa Ballard, and I work for Mission West Virginia, and I've been here for about 5 years, a little over 5 years, I guess going on 6 now already. And I came to Mission West Virginia as a healthy relationship educator, and so I've been in the capacity of a grant manager for about 3 years, I guess now. We had a SRAE grant that I worked on, that I started with. But if you want to go to ahead to the next slide, I'll go ahead and tell you a little bit about our programming. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but Mission West Virginia itself was established in 1997. It was actually established by our governor at the time, who had leftover campaign funds, and saw a need for, it actually began as a need for foster care. Children in foster care was great then. It's actually even greater now. And so he started a program here. And we have grown out of that. And so since we first started Think programming, the programming that I'm in stands for Teaching Health Instead of Nagging Kids. And that program started in 2007. So we've been doing programming with teen pregnancy prevention. So far, we've got $29 million in programming between healthy relationship, adolescent pregnancy prevention, and different programs as that. Next slide. Try not to read all the slides so much. So this program, we have the teen pregnancy prevention, the TPP grants, as well as the SRAE grants, which is a little bit unique, I think, as well, just because they come from different funding pots. But we have served 70,000 youth in West Virginia, and we've also served over 2,000 adults. Due to the fact that some of the programming that we had allowed us to serve the adult population as well. So next slide. We serve the state of West Virginia by using partner relationships as well, which has been really great for us. We have Raynell Medical Center and Case, West Virginia, which are both in the southern part of our state. So while Mission, West Virginia, our office is in the hub of the Charleston area, it's kind of southeast, southwest. We serve a lot of this area. They cover the rest of the southern part of our state. And I will say that our population in West Virginia, our largest city in West Virginia is actually under 50,000. So technically it's also rural, which is Charleston, where our capital is. And so our entire state is now technically considered rural. And that is also a risk factor based off of some of the high risk factors we have seen. We have a high rate of poverty in West Virginia. We have a high dropout rate with a lot of students, and of course a high teen birth rate. So we offer programming through my SRAE program in particular. We offer programming to detention centers, which youth reporting centers, which those are both in our juvenile justice system. We offer it through group homes, through shelters, and then we also offer it for the homeless population as well. So we serve a high risk group of students, and then we also serve high school and middle school populations here within our area, because the student population is, as I said, we're very rural and there is a lot of poverty. Next slide. Okay, so Torri is with AMTC. I will say a little ditty really quickly that AMTC is who we do all of our, we keep all of our ops, which I'll let Torri explain. And all of that information is stored in one place through an online tracking system. And that's how AMTC comes into play for us in a big way. So I'll go ahead and turn over all of that data and let her talk through that.
Good afternoon, everybody. So you're going to see some similar data that you saw with Trinity, but what the services that we provide and the way that we work with both Trinity and Mission West Virginia is that we actually have a system that collects all of the SRAE performance measures. So that's all of the participant demographics, such as age, gender, race, and ethnicity, as well as tracking all of the program components that we'll get to on the next slide, and I'll explain that. But so as you can see for Mission West Virginia, they had a very strong focus on high school youth, serving just under 70% of SRAE programming with high school age youth. And then, gender, This switches from year to year and depending on sites, but with such a high focus on the juvenile justice population that Mission West Virginia has, historically there are more males involved in the juvenile justice system than females, so that's where you're getting that 60-40 split for the most part. And so the one interesting thing or unique thing about West Virginia and being where it sits in Appalachia in a very rural population, 85% of the participants are white, whereas 6% are African American and another 6% are multiracial. That's the majority of the makeup there. And actually, this is a little off from our state demographics. As a state, 92% of our population is white. So the youth actually have slightly more diversity than the rest of the population. Okay, so here are the program completion rates for Mission. And this is one of the things that Melissa mentioned is tracked in OPS, which stands for Online Participant Tracking System. And so what we track is the number of participants that are enrolled in a program, and then the number of participants that complete at least 75% of the curriculum. That's kind of the FISB standard as far as what you consider a completion rate for participants. And so we're able to track every single lesson that they go through. We are able to track the fidelity to that lesson through the Dibble fidelity logs that are created for Love Notes and Relationship Smarts Plus. And then we're able to track any other kind of activities that are part of the program. So when it comes to SRAE, there is a needs assessment component, a trauma assessment component, which is we use the child post-traumatic stress inventory for that. And then based on the results of the needs assessment and the trauma assessment, that is where the case management and referral components come in. And so I know somebody had a question about how the needs assessment works and how you kind of determine who gets case management and who gets a referral. And so what happens is on the needs assessment, it's a basic needs assessment to make sure that their basic needs are being met. So things like clothing, food, transportation, housing, any sort of information they want on healthcare. Are they receiving that type of information or those type of services? And if we find that a participant is not receiving those services, then a referral is made. If it's food, then we will definitely get in touch with a food bank, or if it's at a juvenile justice like youth reporting center, then talking to the social workers there. If it's at school, talking to the guidance counselor. Every site is slightly different, but to make sure those basic needs get met. If a red flag comes up on the trauma assessment, that's where the case management services would come in, working one-on-one with the participant, as well as any other support service partner that is, associated with the program or with the site. And so all of those things are tracked in the OPS system, and come reporting time, we create a performance measures chart for everybody to, have a sense of what has been going on, how many youth are being served, how many youth are getting the services that they actually need, as well as the completion rates of all of that. And one of the things that also is that Mission West Virginia is able to track, just because of the type of settings that they're in, are their vulnerable youth population. And one of the things I will say is that when you're in a public high school or a public middle school, or any sort of public school setting, whether that's alternative or charter or what it might be, these questions are not asked of the students just because of the nature of the questions, and youth aren't always going to disclose, and you don't want to ruin the rapport that you have with them. However, if you're in a detention center, you know that all of those youth qualify as juvenile justice. If you are in a group home for youth in foster care, then you know that those students would fall into that category. Same with if you are doing programming in a homeless shelter or a residential treatment center. The other way that these are collected is, at times students will disclose to you whether they're pregnant or parenting, or they will disclose to you if they are LGBTQ or something like that. So some of these numbers might actually be higher than what is reported, but we just do the best we can at collecting this information and reporting back to FISB.
Okay, so I think this is me, and what we use, as they both have mentioned, is we use the Relationship Smarts Plus curriculum for our 7th, 8th grade, sometimes some 9th grade, depending on where we are, and then we use the Love Notes curriculum for our high school and high risk settings, like our detention centers, our foster care settings, residential treatment. Generally they get the Love Notes, and the curriculum are very similar, and obviously we're, I feel inferior at the moment because this is Dibble's web and we're talking about Dibble curriculum. So when I'm wrong, please feel free to jump in, Kay or Kathy. We really appreciate the curriculum. But so I'm going to just talk through, just if you'll flip to the next slide, some of the things that we like about the curriculum is that it is designed for the vulnerable youth, which we use in both settings. It is appropriate for all the ages that we identify with, and it is culturally appropriate. It's very inclusive, and it complies with all of the SRAE requirements that the list that Crystal mentioned earlier in that breakdown of all those different areas, which if you flip to the next slide, I will show you, I think. Oh, no, yeah, okay, there they are. Yes, these are the 9 components that were written into the grant, which were the, refraining from non-marital sexual activity, self-regulation, success sequencing, healthy relationships, goal setting, resisting sexual coercion, dating violence, preventing youth risk behaviors, and not normalizing teen sexual activity, all of those things. And so I will say, as we started to look at curriculum and try to fit these specific components into what we wanted to choose as a curriculum, they were there. They were all there. It was really simple for us to make the choice because we personally at Mission West Virginia we had used the Relationship Smarts curriculum in the past with a Healthy Marriage grant. So we knew, what the curriculum entailed. We knew we really liked it, and it was well received by students. And so when we started to break down these components, and we worked with AMTC as well, like this is there, we go hand in hand with all of this, and they were able to help us put together how each lesson identified or how that happened. So if you'll flip to the next slide, I think that's where we're going to see, yes. So what we did was we broke down how each lesson, what component it related to for us. And so that was kind of important, that we were able to make sure that that it was relevant and that this curriculum would be a good fit for us. And so for the Relationship Smarts for the middle school population, we kind of went down the list, and I'll just quickly do that. I don't want to, you can check out the curriculum, but like the first couple of lessons, they are, knowing yourself, thinking about your future, getting to know who you are. The next several lessons, lessons 3 through 7, are all about healthy relationships and learning what healthy relationships are. What is attraction? What's that look like? What are the different principles, in a healthy relationship? Breaking up, dating violence, that's a very important lesson as well, because that's where a lot of students really have, they connect really well with all the lessons, but this particular hits a nerve for a lot of students. And then the Decide Don't Slide is also there. And so then the next section is a couple lessons on communication skills and how to have healthy conversations, how to talk to each other, how to have better relationships, healthy relationships through the way you communicate. And then the next lessons would be on the sexual decision making. And these lessons are kind of broken into more of the heart and then the medical. So you kind of talk about, first you kind of talk about the decisions and why you make them and why it's important that you know this person. And we talk about the, intimacy, what intimacy is rather than just, having sex. What is intimacy? And then we talk more in terms of the actual medical. There's medically accurate information on pregnancy, STDs, STIs, however you want to say it, and then HIV. And then in Relationship Smarts, the unplanned pregnancy through the eyes of a child is a really good lesson. We have hit a nerve with that with a lot of students as well. And then the last lesson for Relationship Smarts is the technology piece. And of course, we all know that that's really important. And so as you can see on the left is the breakdown of the activities or the lessons, and then the components on the right. And then the next slide is our relationships or love notes. And it's the same exact breakdown, which with the love notes, it's kind of, back just a couple, the other direction. Oh, other way. Oh, there we go. Okay. So on this lesson or on this breakdown, it's the same exact thing I just kind of went through with the Relationship Smarts. Same deal. We have the knowing yourself lessons. There's actually 3 lessons on this. That's more about getting to know yourself. And then lessons 4 through 8 are more about, we dig more into the healthy relationships. And then we also follow that with the communication lessons and then the sexual decision making as well. And in Love Notes, the technology lesson isn't actually, part of the lesson, 13 lessons, but it's supplemental. It's there and you can add it and use it as well. So the technology piece is there. It just, it's not within that, 1 through 13. And so all of those lessons fit so well into the components for SRAE. I know that it's used for a lot of other things, but for the nature of my grant in particular and the ones that I work with, it fit us perfectly. Is this me? I'll go ahead and say, so what? Melissa. Okay, great, go for it.
So what is a healthy relationship, or is it a healthy relationship? So this is where we're going to do a little bit of an activity. We're going to look at the difference between healthy and unhealthy relationships. We're going to demonstrate using a 3-question guide in assessing your relationship, develop a list of fun activities to keep a relationship strong, analyze the issues around breaking up. So this is one of the lessons that we're going to kind of walk through with you so you can see what the youth are getting in the program. So when we talk to them about unhealthy and healthy relationships, under unhealthy, we ask them to ask these 3 questions. Is it a conditional relationship? Is it controlling or disrespectful? Is it mostly about sex or material things? Is it selfish? And for a healthy relationship, is it unconditional? Is it respectful, equal, and supportive? Is there attraction on many levels? Is there giving from the other person and from yourself? So this activity, we then do a sculpting activity. And one of the things that my team in New York does instead of the sculpting is that they have the youth write like poetry or spoken word or rap. And then they give it as a presentation. So the students are going to do this activity where they have Play-Doh and they get a card and they're going to read and discuss their cards in the group. So the questions they're going to get are, have you seen any relationship like this in real life? What behaviors would be seen in that type of relationship? How would it feel if you were in this relationship? And then once they go through and discuss that, they're going to brainstorm symbols, images, or scenes that would represent the kind of relationship, and then they're going to sculpt it. Or like I said they can do a spoken word, or they can write poetry as an alternative. So here's one of the examples of the adaptation about the song or the poem or rap, and then performing it. And so here's just an example of one of the poems a young lady wrote about one of these cards that they read. So we're gonna vote here. So we have some pictures from Mission and from Trinity's youth that have went through this activity, and so we're gonna ask you to decide if you think this is a rural or an urban group of youth that created this sculpture.
So if this is Kay, so if you think this is an urban group, raise your hand really fast, and then we'll ask who thinks it's an urban group or rural group. Anyway, start with urban. Is it urban? Yes or no? Raise your hand if you think it's urban. Okay, Kathy, can you note how many there are? Okay, let's put down those slides. And how many think it's rural? Raise your hand. Okay, so what is it, Crystal? Is it urban or rural? And do you know what card that they were sculpting about here, by any chance?
This looks to me like it's the controlling, would you say?
Yes, this is the controlling. Yep, so they have them, this is the rural, and they have them in a box.
Right. Okay, good work, gang. Let's go to the next one. So, Crystal, what card is this that they're sculpting about?
So this one, they're sculpting about a healthy relationship. And one of the things that they learn in the curriculum is about the 3 sides of a pyramid that makes your relationship strong. And so you have to have all 3 of those sides in order to have a strong relationship. So the one they're talking about, the card they're talking about in this one is a healthy relationship.
Okay, so those of you out in radio land, is this an urban relationship, or, you know, is this urban? Young people, raise your hand if you think it's urban. Okay. Okay, I'm going to take your hand. Okay, how many think it's rural? Raise your hand if you think it's rural. Let's see who's, oh, more people think it's rural. Okay, what's the reveal, Crystal? Wow, rural. Woohoo.
That hill.
Okay.
That triangle looks like a hill.
And Crystal, what's this card?
The card is on there. Can you read it? This is another, this would be another card of an example of a healthy relationship where both people are giving into the relationship.
Okay, so how many of you think this is urban? Quickly raise your hands. Okay, a bunch of you think it's urban. Okay, oh, and it is urban. Okay.
You guys are good.
Yeah, they're getting smarter all the time. Okay, what's the next slide? Oh, okay. Crystal, what's this card?
This is going to be this is going to be an unhealthy relationship. And it's, again, controlling, where somebody has you locked up in prison.
Okay. Okay, so how many of you think it's urban? Raise your hands. Okay. Okay, a bunch of you think it's urban. Okay, how many of you think it's rural? I think more people thought it was urban. Crystal, what's the answer? Oh,
Rural.
rural. Okay. Okay, do we have one more?
Yes, one more. So this one is also an unhealthy relationship. You see two people in a bed together, and the green beans in this one represent money. You know, you got it's 1 o'clock according to the, iPhone, 1 a.m. So this is an unhealthy relationship.
So it's about money
So what do we
or
think?
sex or things
Sex.
like that.
Mhm.
Right. It's not about
Late night, rendezvous.
party, right. Okay, how many of you think this is urban? Okay. Bunches of you think it's urban. Okay, how many of you think it's rural? Well, let me put. If you think it's rural, vote again because I put your hands down real quickly. Okay, it looks like most people think it's urban. What's the reveal here? Oh, urban! Yay!
Urban.
Good.
So then the other thing we just wanted to share a little bit with you guys was some of the responses that we've gotten from youth in the program and what it's meant to them, and just kind of share some of their stories, because we can talk all day about what we think is best for our youth and best for our communities, but really without having input from the youth that we're serving, we don't always really know what they need. So some of the responses that we've gotten from youth through the program, the first one is, this is the first program I've ever been a part of that gave us a chance to sit down and talk about it. And this student was talking about the LGBT issues. Another student said, I want a man who has ambitions and goals. So I should be someone with ambitions and goals. And again, that's something that we talk about right in the program. We talk about who you are, where are you going, what are your goals? And if you want someone that wants that, I should have that too. Another student was talking about, their educator that's in the classroom with them. The teacher is so understanding and willing to listen. The program was fun and interesting. I learned a lot. Next slide, Kathy. This one's great. No one in my family has a marriage that stayed together. I didn't believe in marriage because of it, but now I'm beginning to think that maybe I can be the different one. I could be first. And so again, having that foundation of a healthy relationship has really helped our young people shift their perspective when they don't see a lot of healthy relationships. Who I end up with is not just someone I'm feeling. It needs to be someone I would want my kids to be raised by. Mister, all this information makes me not want to be in a relationship. Relationships are a lot more complicated than they seem. Next slide. And we're to questions.
So I have some questions, and I'm going to allow the three of you to weigh in on this. So we talked about, gave some data about the differences in rural and urban youth, and I'm wondering if you have other observations, maybe outside, non-program, or as you think about implementing programs, how you might implement them different in urban or rural settings, or other comparing and contrasting of urban and rural youth. I'll let any of you guys order that.
I will. This is Torri from AMTC. So because I'm familiar with both programs, in all honesty, part of the reason that we decided to put together is to show everybody that, they make, and they is a kind of a general statement, they make it seem as though rural and urban youth are so different and that you have to approach things in such different ways. And when it comes to this type of programming, I think that Crystal, Melissa, and I have all seen that all youth need the same information. It might be in a different setting, or the type of activities and things they do for fun might be a little bit different based on availability. Like rural youth can't just pick up and go to the mall. it might be 2 hours away, or there might not be a mall. And, whereas, urban youth have public transportation, rural youth don't. So there might be some things that they need in terms of safety when it comes to that type of stuff that rural youth don't need. But in terms of what youth need in terms of risk avoidance education, and the things that are just out there in this world and that they need to navigate, such as relationships, such as setting goals for their future, such about, making just healthy decisions about, who their friends are going to be and the type of decisions they're going to make. All of that's the same. And, with this type of program, this funding is through FSBE, and so one of the requirements is that you serve at-risk youth. And so at-risk youth in rural settings and urban settings are going to have high rates of teen birth. They're going to have high STD rates. Crystal talked about the slide in the beginning and kind of showing that they're high in both places. So it's not just urban youth that have this issue or urban youth that have this issue. It's they both are more vulnerable to pregnancy, STDs, drug and alcohol use, all of those risk behaviors.
Thank you, Torri. So here's another one. Similarly, other than the demographic data, have you seen any other trends of rural versus urban youth, such as differences in behavior in classrooms, questions or concerns they raise or their teachers raise? And Haley says, we often have teachers approach us with requests to address specific issues in addition to the curriculum. So I'm assuming there might be some things happening in the locale that are different.
This is Crystal. I think I think that we both get a lot of in Virginia and in Mission West Virginia and with our groups for additional services. Like we had one teacher or one principal that really wanted bullying curriculum. And, so we worked with that school to provide additional lessons after we finished our programming to really help address bullying. That's a big one. We have a lot going on with the opioid crisis, but in West Virginia, they have very high rates of drug use too. And so I think what happens, and I think to kind of echo what Torri was saying, is what we found in these rural and urban youth populations is that youth, no matter where they live or where they are, we're having these, they're youth. They engage in at-risk behaviors. Their brains aren't fully developed. They're trying to step away and have some independence. And no matter where they live at, the difference is access. We in some of our neighborhoods, we have a lot higher rates of gun violence. Not necessarily mass school shootings, but they're going home and it's not safe for them to walk home at night. So, we don't have a lot of programming that's going to happen at night in some of those neighborhoods because it's not safe for them to be out. So some of that would be some of the differences, but I think for the most part, in terms of like additional services that schools and teachers are asking for, we're getting a lot of the same requests.
Definitely, yes, I would agree with that. There's they all have problems with sexting. They all have problems with bullying. They all have problems with, whenever you have the teen population. This is Melissa, sorry, but whenever you have the teen population, it's amazing how very similar they are when it comes to the issues that they all kind of share.
This is Kay. So it sounds like it's almost more about, I think, Torri, you might have said this, about the fact that you're working with at-risk populations. And so risk is more of a definer than their setting, urban or rural. Is that fair to
Sure,
say?
it is. But I mean, both Trinity and Mission also work with, youth in the local public schools as well. And I think it's, it's similar requests, and they're dealing, the country as a whole and teens as a whole are dealing with all of the same things. It might just be in a different setting. And that's something that we've, I think in the past we too thought, oh, there's this huge difference between rural and urban youth. And it wasn't until we kind of got together and started talking, realizing that for the most part, the issues are the same. Now, the culture they might be dealing with it is slightly different, but the issues are the same. I know one big thing here, and Melissa, you can talk a little bit more about it, but there has been a lot of requests for training on consent. And that's one of the big things that's coming up with, youth just not understanding what consent is and what it isn't, and just assuming that everyone is okay with everything when they're not. So not only how to give consent, but also how to receive consent. And then also it's to the point where some of the schools are requesting for, organizations like Mission and Trinity to train their counselors and such on what is consent and what does that look like.
Yes, we just trained one of our counties, all of their counselors, their middle school level, in order for them to deal with that. And the really good thing is we have every site that we've ever been to, we've never had any issue with anybody not accepting our programming. They love our programming. They hear about these these lessons, and they want more. They want us to, they'll tell their other schools that you all need this too, and so we have never had an issue with any kind of buy-in with the curriculum. And there is a consent component, and in the state of West Virginia, they just made a new requirement. The House just passed a new bill that requires that every student from K through 12 have a lesson, at least an hour, on consent. And so that's kind of one of the offshoots from them needing to have some information, but it also has opened doors for them to recognize that there's a whole lot more to what's going on with their students than what they maybe even realize, and in ways that we can support each other and help them with their teens. And I will say one of the differences, because we have a unique environment in that we have very rural students, and then we have our largest city, Charleston area. We have students in that area, what our rural kids would call more urban, which they're not, but they seem like they are. And even in that little bit, you have a demographic difference, but they're still very much alike. When your conversation is more, you might, even in different styles of music, where, in one school, country music might be more popular. In another school, you have hip hop. In another school, you have, almost metal. And our educators are able to kind of adapt their music, adapt some of those types of things to fit the population that they're in, but the lesson, the core values of the lesson, the information that they're receiving, it's still the same information.
So Melissa, this question is for you. This comes from Danae, who's working a program serving rural and Native American youth in South Dakota. And she's curious about how to manage case management and referrals when successfully for youth when they're geographically removed from those services.
That is, well, and that's a really good point. We have services available in our area. We have a good relationship with a lot of different agencies in our area. So we are able to refer students to them. We actually use school counselors a lot as well to help, depending on the needs of the students. But our services generally, even in the rural areas, the biggest issue for us is transportation as well for students. And so those are issues that need addressed almost basically individually. And the smaller school settings, generally the smaller the school, the more involved the counselor, teacher, health teacher, the principals, they're more involved with the students as well. And so they're kind of able to offer support as, you know, to the students too, and how can we work out transportation for, you know, if that might be an issue. But we generally have, you know, we generally have enough services. We have a lot of, you know, medical, I don't know exactly what specific services that, you know, that you're referring to here, but like mental health facilities, we have mental health, you know, local mental health facilities and that sort of stuff. So we haven't really had an issue with that. You know, we obviously are not, I mean, I have a master's in social work, but I'm not, you know, making all these decisions. We do a lot of referring out to people who can take care of whatever we are identifying needs and helping find services that would match to be able, obviously we are mandated reporters as well. We have had to, you know, call Child Protective Services and get them involved in, you know, in certain situations. And we've had, you know, a sex trafficking incident. And so we have had a multitude of different, you know, issues that we've had to take care of.
So here's one last question. And this is from Roman. I am fascinated to learn that urban and rural deal with similar issues. However, it seems that where I'm from in Fresno, California, rural kids make the majority of the population at the detention center. In my opinion, this is a lack of services. This is due to a lack of services in rural areas. Plus, most urban kids can afford better attorneys or get lost time for the same crime. Do you have an opinion on this? I'm going to shoot that to anybody on this little team. This isn't, I mean, in other words, yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I'll say in Miami that, well, Miami's hard because there's not even New York, but we have a lot of kids in our juvenile detention facilities. I mean, we have a full school, like they have their own school that they go to so that they can stay in school. And so I mean, I would say it just depends on your location and depends on your community. And again, that's just getting to know your community and where you're at and how you serve them. And I think too, that for you identifies a need where you can fill a gap and use it as your opportunity to fill a gap for those rural areas around Fresno where they are maybe not getting services, but you can provide them. And so I think that's another good option, is sometimes it's finding the gap and using the programming to fill the gap, that's an opportunity that is available for you. But I think in our counties where we're at, we have large amounts of kids in the juvenile justice system as well, but their crimes tend to be a little bit more serious, probably in the urban areas.
All right. Well, thank you, Crystal, and thank you to Melissa, and thank you to Torri. We really appreciate you being with us today. Someone did ask if we could share your instrument that you do need assessment. So we'll see if we can share that. We will certainly try to share that and put it out when we archive the webinar. We'll put it on our website. Here are some references to the materials and the references in the program or in the today's webinar, and we will also post these slides online so you can take a closer look. If you need to get in touch with any of these consummate professionals, here are their emails, and again you'll have that on the slides when you when we post them. And next, thank you for joining us. We're going to send you a brief survey about how we did. You can go to the archives and look at this again or share it with colleagues if you'd like. And Kathy and I have our emails here, and we're open and we'd love to hear from you. There are the normal ways to stay in touch. The most important one is to subscribe to our newsletter. So we will keep you in touch that way. And lastly, next month, we have a program, Teaching Relationship Education in High Schools, Flip Faust, many of you may know who are from the More Than Conquerors in Conyers, Georgia, has an amazing program going on, and Mathematica is doing a research study on it. So they will be presenting that data, that information, and that data next month. And we look forward to talking to you or hearing, being with you next month. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.